I was standing in the chilly morning air, dressed in black. I never thought I would be laughing at my own father's burial. My head was a jumble of feelings. The suit I wore suddenly felt too tight, and then my wife leaned in, just beyond a whisper, and said something so ridiculous, so blatantly brazen that I changed the locks on the $30 million condo you inherited because I couldn't help myself. She said it casually, as if she were talking about supper. Perhaps we might divide it if you're not comfortable with it. Plans? As if she hadn't just grabbed something that wasn't hers. As if my father's body wasn't lying just a few feet away. I turned to her, looking for some sign of hesitation, some flicker of realization that she had just made the worst decision of her life. But Rachel's lips held that same confident smirk. Yet deep in her perfectly lined eyes, there was a glint of shame. She always wore that smirk when she felt in control, and that's when I laughed. Not a chuckle, not a bitter scoff, but a full, uncontrollable outburst of laughter that cut through the morning air. Heads turned toward us. The somber atmosphere cracked. Rachel's smirk vanished. She snarled and gripped my arm. "What the hell is so funny?" I wiped a tear from my eye, still grinning. "You don't know, do you?" Rachel tensed beside me. Her hands tightened. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. She had been so certain, so sure she had just backed me into a corner, that I had nowhere to go. But she didn't know my father. He was always 10 steps ahead, and so was I. The funeral had drained me in every way. Losing my father felt like losing the ground beneath me. He had built everything from nothing. He had taught me discipline, taught me that despite our wealth, hard work was everything. But Rachel wasn't mourning a great man. No. She was celebrating the removal of the one barrier that had kept her from the wealth she so desperately wanted. Should have known. When she insisted on sitting beside me in the front row, gripping my hand. "We'll get through this together," she whispered. I should have known when she kept asking about the reading of the will. I should have known when. 2 nights before, she was in an oddly good mood. Even though she knew I had spent the entire day with attorneys handling estate matters, she had been waiting for the right moment, and now she thought she had it. "I changed the locks," she repeated, watching my reaction. I shook my head in disbelief. "Well," she said, crossing her arms, "it's our condo." I took a deep breath. Even in the presence of my father's closest friends and family, she was boldly staking a claim on something that wasn't hers. There was anger. There was betrayal. But mostly, there was amusement, because Rachel had played her hand too soon. I lowered my voice. "You really think that's how this works?" She cocked her head in confusion. "Daniel," she said, her voice edged with impatience, "we're married. What's yours is mine." I almost pitied her. Almost. Rachel had never understood that my father taught me to never mix love with money, and he certainly taught me never to leave my wealth unprotected. She thought she had taken something from me, but legally, the condo was untouchable. She had changed the locks on a property she had no legal claim to, and in doing so, she had set herself up for the biggest mistake of her life. I leaned in, mirroring her earlier posture. "Rachel," I said, my voice calm. "Do you know what's truly funny?" Her smirk faltered. For the first time, her confidence wavered. Her hands twitched. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to take back what she had said. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I savored the moment. "The condo," I said, slowly, deliberately, "isn't even under my name." Her whole body stiffened. I watched as realization sank in. Her breath caught. Her fingers curled into fists, and that's when I knew. Rachel had just lost. For the first time in our marriage, she wasn't in control, and she knew it. Her carefully, "So please let me know, Rachel, when you changed her hair." Before she recovered, her confidence wavered for a brief moment. "Does it matter?" I grinned. "It makes me happy." She let out a sharp exhale. A few days earlier, while you were preoccupied with the funeral arrangements, you shrugged as if it weren't a huge concern. It was like a kick to the stomach when I was grieving and attempting to come to terms with the death of the man who raised me. She had been taking care of her priorities and obtaining what she saw to be her portion of the money, and that said it all I needed to know. You didn't even wait until I said more to you after the funeral. Rachel sighed, obviously feeling impatient, and I said to her, "Don't be." I laughed again, but this time it was hollow. "Rachel, this is about you. It's dramatic, and it's about our future. I'm your wife, and I don't understand why you're making this such a huge issue." She crossed her arms, her face hardening. "I should be able to access whatever we own." I raised my eyebrow. "The last time I looked at my—" Her eyes flashed with annoyance when her father handed me the condo, but that's just semantics. Do you not think that a marriage is about sharing? Oh, I did. Sharing. I simply didn't think I was being played. So I took a long breath and shook my head. You truly believe you have any right to that condo? Rachel gave me her trust back. She lawfully raised her chin. Sure, I discussed it with someone and I held... She blinked. You spoke to someone. Then she raised a hand to shut me off. While I was grieving for my father, her lips squeezed together. And for my inheritance, over something you had no right to. For the first time, I noticed doubt instead of haughtiness in her gaze. She didn't expect me to push back, and she most definitely didn't expect me to give in to her pressure to let this go. I leaned in a little to gain the upper hand while maintaining a composed tone of voice. Rachel, she scowled. You really ought to have done your research before pulling this stunt. I grinned. The condo isn't even in my own name. Her face went pale as I nodded, allowing the impact of what I had spoken to sink in. As you heard, prior to my father's death, the condo was put into a trust. You're not on the legally protected trust. The color drained from her entire face. She opened and closed her mouth as her mind raced. She began in a trembling voice, attempting to comprehend how her big plan had suddenly fallen apart in front of her. You're lying. I cocked my head. Are you certain about that? She blinked quickly and grabbed her arms firmly. I could hear the fear in her mind. This wasn't how things were supposed to happen. She believed she had me trapped since she played the game flawlessly, but she underestimated me. Now she was about. Rachel abruptly straightened, faking a grin, perhaps sensing the repercussions. I may have gone too far, but you can put me in the trust now, and we can work things out. I was astounded by her audacity. She nodded and moved. Closer. Fix this. You're my husband after all. It should be ours. And I recognized then that she had never truly loved me, but rather had enjoyed the safety I gave her, the way of life I did. Love had never been a part of it. Speaking for her, I inhaled deeply while staring her in the eye. No, Rachel, Daniel, I'm being sensible. I can fix this. Her smile faded. I cut in. I was rational when I chose to ignore all of the red flags. Her nostrils flared as I attempted to persuade myself that she wasn't after my money, but I was done being sensible. So you're just going to ruin our marriage because of this? I shook my head. No, Rachel. You threw it away the instant you put money before me, she snapped. If this is how... Her jaw tightened and her hands balled into fists. I didn't even consider the possibility that we should part ways when you're going to be... She expected me to plead for this marriage, but I wasn't prepared to fight for it. Someone who had previously deceived me. And I felt relieved for the first time in a long time, because this was the starting point of her decline, and I was determined to observe every moment of it. Rachel had always been certain, convinced that she could manipulate any situation. She conducted herself like a queen and was arrogant when it came to obtaining what she desired. She had played the wrong game with the wrong man this time. Now, she was going to discover what happens when greed causes you to lose sight of reality.